Welcome to Through the Corporate Glass, a podcast that explores career choices. We dive into the latest trends in tech careers, demystify industry roles, spotlight startups, and even explore unconventional paths outside the industry. Join us for authentic conversations that will challenge your assumptions and inspire you to think differently. Welcome to another episode of Through the Corporate Glass. I'm your host, Ashwini. In today's episode, let's uncover the field of operations research. How does it relate to AI, machine learning, and analytics? How is it applied in the industry? What are the current areas of research? And how does the new wave of generative AI fit into all of this? To answer this and much more, we will talk to Dr. Radhika Kulkarni, an advanced analytics professional active in the areas of operations research, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. She retired after 35 years of leading various areas at SAS Institute. For the last 10 years of her professional career, Dr. Kulkarni was the Vice President of Advanced Analytics R&D, overseeing software development in many analytics areas, including statistics, operations research, econometrics, forecasting, data mining, and machine learning. Dr. Kulkarni served as the 2022 President of Informs. Welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Thanks, Ashwini. Thank you very much for inviting me to share my experiences on your podcast. And I look forward to speaking with you and really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much. I have to start with saying that I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you. That's very kind.
So let's start from the beginning. You've had an extremely illustrious career. So, can you tell us about what motivated you to pursue math in the first shot and then operations research?
Sure, I'd be glad to share that. I was always interested in maths even as a young girl in elementary school, middle school. I was very fond of mathematics. I used to be very proud because my dad was very proud of the fact that I liked mathematics. So, of course, that made me even happier to pursue mathematics. So, when
Right.
I was in high school, we had to choose between mathematics and biology, and I chose mathematics as my elective instead of biology, and that set my path to continuing to do an undergraduate degree in mathematics in India, which was followed by a master's in mathematics from IIT Delhi. And then after that, I came to Cornell to do a PhD in mathematics. And my goal was to get a PhD in mathematics and perhaps go into teaching. In my first semester at Cornell, I had chosen the minor of operations research. My thesis research was going to be in mathematics, but my minor was operations research. And one of the first courses I took in my first fall semester was on mathematical programming. It was extremely interesting to me, and I loved the fact that we were solving some real decision problems using mathematical tools. And it seemed to me like this was mathematics with a purpose. And so at that point, I talked to the Department of Mathematics at Cornell, as well as the Department of Operations Research. And they were kind enough to see that my interest was in operations research, and I was able to switch my degree program to operations research, and I continued my PhD in that field, in that department. So that's how I went from mathematics to OR.
Wow, that's amazing. I also love the tagline mathematics with a purpose. Could you give us a brief introduction to the field for those who don't know what operations research involves?
Yes, and especially I said operations research, but most of us refer to it as OR. And many people, when they first hear the term that I'm working in OR, they ask me, "Oh, are you in an operating theater?" So, you're absolutely right that I should explain what OR means in this context. So, to me, operations research is the science of making data driven decisions using mathematical modeling. That's a very generic definition, and it's hard to understand what it actually means. So let me give you an example that every one of us has probably faced. We've all been bumped from an airline flight, haven't we? Or you've seen others being bumped from an airline flight. You go to the airport and you go to your gate, and then they say, "Hey, we are overbooked. So is there anybody who's willing to take a later flight? We'll give you X amount of dollars or some credit, etc." So of
Right.
course, many of us don't take that. But have you ever wondered why would they overbook a flight? What is the reason for that? And the goal that all the airlines have is to maximize their revenues. That means they want to make sure that not a single seat on the plane goes unoccupied. So they want to make sure that all the seats on the plane are full and they don't have any empty seats. And it may happen that some people book a ticket, buy a ticket, but then for some reason they're not able to travel. So then that leaves an empty seat. So at that point in time, the airlines obviously had an opportunity to probably sell that seat. So what they usually do is if they know that a particular flight is going to be very full, but there are also possibilities that they may have empty seats, then they sell more tickets for that particular flight than the actual number of seats on the plane. So that's called overselling, overbooking. The hope is that some passengers may not turn up, so everything goes fine and there's no problem. But if most of the passengers do turn up and there are more passengers waiting to board the plane, then there are seats on the plane. So that's when they start making these offers. So it's quite possible that the people who bought those extra seats are probably some of the business travelers, and they may have paid a lot of money for that. At that point in time, the airlines feels that they could make more money by making sure that they don't have an empty seat at all. So the decisions that the airlines have to make before a particular flight is how many tickets should they sell and how much should they overbook to account for the no-shows. So that's the decision problem. The goal is that they want to maximize the revenue, but there's a constraint. The obvious constraint, of course, is the capacity of the plane. They cannot clearly have more people than can fit on the plane. The decision problem has a goal. There are decisions that are to be made, which are under the control of the people who are making those decisions. And then there are certain constraints. So in this case, the airline wants to maximize their revenue. The decisions are how many tickets to sell, how much to overbook, and the constraint is the capacity of the plane. But in order to make these decisions, they need to use a lot of data that tells them the day before Thanksgiving is a very busy day. So probably the planes are going to be super full. Whereas sometime in February, there may not be that much demand. So they use the previous flights, etc., for the time of day for forecasting the demand. And they use that information to actually decide based on these, here are the decisions. So that's one particular decision problem where I have explained it in the framework of what an OR practitioner would use. In other words, OR helps you make data driven decisions, the data in this case being the flights on similar days in previous years, using mathematical modeling. The models that we use then are how do you decide, how is the forecasting done, what is the relationship between the cost and the revenue, the price of the ticket and the revenue, and so on. Does that give a pretty decent idea about what this means?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you walked through an example. I think that really provides a lot of clarity. And that makes me wonder also how closely is operations research related to the field of analytics and AI?
You can answer this question in multiple ways. And the way I like to explain it is by taking some of these definitions. So I defined what operations research means. In my mind, what analytics really denotes is the use of quantitative techniques, which could come from statistics, data mining, forecasting, optimization, etc., to guide and support critical business decisions that are based on customer and operational data. So essentially, analytics is the field where there is a wide variety of tools that you can use to solve these problems. And often you can classify the type of analytics by the nature of the decision support that you're looking for. So if you're just looking at data and trying to see what is the relationship between height and weight, or what is the relationship between price and the profit, or the cost and the losses, and so on and so forth, that would be just drawing a line or drawing a graph that connects these different x variables and y variables. So that kind of analysis we would call descriptive. So you're basically finding a mathematical way to describe the problem space that you're looking at. Now, using that, you can do some predictions. So, for instance, the simplest prediction would be if you're just trying to draw a straight line. You're given some points and saying, draw a line to fit those points. You
Mhm.
get some x's and some y's, and you draw a line y equals mx plus c. This is the basic linear regression. So, given that you've been given 10 points and you've drawn this y equals mx plus c straight line, now you take a point that was not given to you and say, where would that point be on the y-axis? So you take that y equals mx plus c equation and you plug in your x and you get y, right? So you're able to predict or be able to tell what y would be for that corresponding x. So that's a simple example of using data to tell you something about data that you have not seen. So, this kind of analysis is used in forecasting. So, you look at all the weather data and then you decide that based on that, the weather forecast for today or tomorrow is going to be X, Y, and Z. Likewise, you have some information about the demographics of a population. And based on that data, you say, okay, if a person is of this particular background, these are all his characteristics or her characteristics. What can you say about this one particular feature for that person? That's called just prediction, forecasting, or data mining, or prediction. That's called predictive analytics. And depending on the relationship between all the variables that are involved, the types of predictions that can happen, they have different statistical or forecasting or machine learning models. Now, given all of this information, if you want to say, what is the best that I can do? What is the best decision I can make for the number of tickets to sell? Or what is the best decision I can make regarding at what price should I purchase something? So those are all decisions which are called prescriptive decisions, and that's where operations research comes into mind. So go back to the example that I told you about the airlines. There, it's a decision problem, and you're using the data and the models for that data to say what is the best decision. So all of these techniques that get used fall into the field of analytics. That's how I look at it. Now, artificial intelligence, I think of it as an application of algorithms and various machine learning techniques that use massive amounts of relevant data and tremendous computing power to do tasks at a superhuman speed. And why does this sometimes look like magic? It's because of the speed of the algorithms and the capacity to process vast amounts of data. So AI has the ability to analyze large amounts of data, recognize patterns, and make predictions or decisions based on that data, continuously improving its performance over time. So when you tie all of these together, I would say that operations research or the prescriptive analytics plays a significant role in analytics as well as AI and enables you to make smarter decisions for a better world. So, OR researchers and practitioners are trained to formulate very complex decision problems using a systems thinking approach. So, many real world scenarios that involve these complex decisions can benefit from the application of ORMS in areas as varied as agriculture, education, etc. In a way, all of these fields are tied together. They depend a lot on each other, and using them together effectively is where we can get the most value for our efforts.
Yeah, that is actually fascinating. So it isn't like AI and analytics are tools that are leveraged by operations research. It could potentially be the other way as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot that each area can gain from the other. And something that I have promoted throughout my career is how can all these disciplines that are different work together to make a lot better decisions, a lot better predictions.
Absolutely. That would be really fascinating to see some of these overlapping areas. I think one misconception is that whenever people think about operations research, it's usually, maybe it's because of the word research in there, but you generally do not apply it to industry roles. So I'm curious what some of the industry roles are that actually utilize OR.
Almost every industry has decision problems. And when there are those decision problems, you can find opportunities to use OR. And some of the industries that use it very heavily are airlines, which we talked about for one particular example in airlines. But even within airlines, many of the crew scheduling problems that become a huge issue when there is bad weather, because if one flight is delayed, it creates a domino effect and affects everything. So then
Right.
they have to do a rapid rescheduling, figure out which crew can handle which plane, which planes cannot take off, where do we get other planes from, etc. So all of these are decisions that need to be made very efficiently and effectively. So airlines is one of the earliest industries which used operations research very heavily. Another one is the war effort, even in the First and Second World Wars. In fact, the name operations research comes from the fact that some of the major logistical problems and supply problems that arose during the World War needed some of these mathematical techniques. So the word operations research comes from actually from war operations. So
Oh,
operations research had its birth more or less in during that period. Coming to the today's world, so supply chain problems, logistics, manufacturing, agricultural problems, healthcare, even things such as when you're talking about a very fascinating example is when you're doing radiation, for instance, radiation therapy for cancer treatment. Nowadays, the methods have become so sophisticated so that you can use OR methods to figure out a very targeted place for the doctor to apply the radiation so that it has minimum impact on non-cancerous cells and maximum impact on the cells that it's supposed to affect. So there are lots of mathematical problems that are formulated as an OR decision problem. So that's a healthcare example. And we also talked about scheduling of airlines, but again, scheduling of nurses, scheduling of ambulances, where should you place ambulances so that they can be most effectively deployed to wherever there is a problem, etc. All of these are prime examples where operations research can be used. So marketing, sustainability, policy analysis, even something as sophisticated as the kidney exchange process, all of those things are very heavily impacted by the application of OR techniques.
that is amazing to hear, just in terms of the wide range of applications. And I'm guessing anybody who is applying for a decision scientist role or any kind of senior management role in these areas could potentially leverage their knowledge of operations research, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And something that I have promoted a lot throughout my career is that even if you're not an expert in OR, you need to make sure that the decision makers understand the value that OR can bring to the table, because it's the decision makers, the hiring managers, they are the ones who need to say, okay, for these kinds of problems, which we have a lot of, so we need some optimization experts. So let's make sure we hire the right kind of optimization experts. So you may not have studied OR, but you need to know that OR is a field which has expertise that would be very valuable to your overall, if you're building an analytics team, for instance, or a decisioning team, you need to data science team, you need to make sure that you have people with this expertise because they can apply them to a variety of problems.
Yeah, yeah, actually, that's amazing. And this brings me to the Center of Excellence that you set up during your years at the SAS Institute, which was an expert consulting services group to solve some of the toughest analytical problems and across a diverse set of Fortune 100 companies.
Yes.
And I'm guessing to your point, I'm actually curious What does it need in terms of skills to be able to pioneer an effort like this?
It goes back to what are the skills you need to be a good leader. And
Mm,
this can be in any field, right? Whether you're in analytics or healthcare or wherever. So, first and foremost, you need to understand what the goals are for your company, your department, your division, whichever small piece that you might be a part of, or which then eventually becomes a part of the whole company's business. So you need to understand the goals. What is it that we want to achieve? So when I was a part of SAS Institute, what I wanted to understand is what does SAS want to do? Where do we want to go? And
right.
then what can I bring to the table? And how can I make a difference and add value? So, as you explore this, you need to make sure that you're talking to many stakeholders, all the stakeholders that have a stake in this problem of being making the company better, making the profits more, etc. You figure out what everybody has to say about it, and then you can see, okay, where can I make a difference? What are we doing currently that is not helping us meet the objective? What can we do more? So those are all some of the questions that you have to ask yourself. I was first an individual contributor in OR, and then I became the manager of the OR department.
Mhm.
At that point, I recognized that in order for us to be better in all the different software products, it would be wonderful if the different areas of analytics could all work together. So
Mm,
that was something that I felt was very important. And having a leader who believed in that vision was very important. That was my idea that led me to ask for and make a case for saying that let's create an analytics R&D division, and here are some of the things that we can do better. Some of the things that we can do is emphasize that there needs to be a lot of multidisciplinary collaboration, because the data mining researchers can benefit from some of the optimization techniques that they're doing. And the optimization folks can improve their algorithms by looking at some of the problems that are being brought by the forecasting department or the data mining department or the statistics department. Their researchers are trying to solve some problems in their domain, but many of them have some special nuances to the optimization problem. So looking at that will help you improve your own core algorithms. So you can see how this ability to work together makes a big difference for everybody involved. All the different software pieces can get better. So this was the vision that I had, and I made a case for it. I presented it to the VP of R&D, and then it went up, of course, to the CEO, and then they agreed to create the analytics R&D and made me the leader of that. So that's how I went from being the director of OR to eventually the VP of analytics. I created the analytics R&D, but then we found that many customers had problems that were hard to solve, and it required people with research level expertise in R&D who could work closely with the customers and then bring back the problems to actually do more research and create some custom solutions for them. So
mm.
that's where we said, okay, we need to create an OR center of excellence, which then grew to become the OR and AI ML center of excellence. So it was a little bit different from other R&D divisions within SAS. It was a long answer to your question, but it maps or mirrors how I progressed in my career as well.
No, that was fascinating. And I think it's so relevant right now, what you mentioned about the expert consulting group, just in terms of a feedback mechanism, right? So it is
Yes,
like, so you're actively getting the customer feedback and then tuning almost the product.
you're absolutely right, because it really requires that customer input to make sure you're solving the right problem and in the right way and in a way that makes sense to the customer.
Yes. And it's very relevant right now with the whole wave of generative AI technologies, given that it's so new.
Absolutely.
So you've actually been doing both research as well as industry roles in parallel. How have you balanced your commitment and involvement across these areas?
So, as it happens with almost any role in an industry, when you're working for a company, and I was working for a software company. So, being a member of the software industry, all research that we did was driven by a specific purpose. Basically, SAS Institute produces software products that are generic in nature, like statistics, operations research, forecasting, data mining, machine learning, etc., where there is no specific problem that you're trying to solve, but you're trying to make some software that can be used in multiple industries without really needing to know the specifics of that industry. So, for these products, the research involved developing new and efficient methods and algorithms to solve these problems as well as possible for as broad a range of topics, domains as necessary. So there we needed to make sure that the solvers were faster in optimization, the estimation methods addressed all the issues that could happen with the data, the machine learning methods where you were able to create ways in which you can pick the best model for the data, etc. So all the research was involved in trying to figure out how do you do this better. In addition to these generic products, which were, I would call them domain agnostic, we also developed solutions for specific industries like hospitality, retail, financial services, healthcare, etc. For these solutions, the generic optimizers or the generic methods may not always work. You might have to research some specific methods for their specific problem, get the techniques to solve them effectively. So, in all cases, the research was very much driven by the product that we were trying to produce and sell, or the customer that we were trying to work with and help solve their problems.
So a lot more directed research. Yeah. I know this one's a very broad question. I'm curious about the challenges that you've faced over the years in the industry.
First of all, in my particular many different roles that I had, some of the challenges for solving these specific customer problems were trying to figure out the details from the domain experts and understanding their goals, ensuring that the right data were available, and making sure that what we developed meets all the usability requirements, etc. Working with the end users and continuing to work with them for any needed enhancement. So these are all technical problems that you
Right.
have to solve these problems. In addition, when you're working as part of a team, the challenges are how do you convince others of what needs to be done? And how do you keep an open mind to listen to the others so that you may not have thought of all the problems, but they bring up, you describe, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And then they come back and they say, you know what, Radhika, I heard you, but have you thought about this? So if you close your mind to feedback, you're not going to improve. So some of the challenges that you face when you're working in a team is that some people do not have that ability. So how do you make sure that you work with them? How do you convince them that, okay, what you're saying makes sense, but here are some things that you need to also think about. When we formed the analytics R&D group, people were coming with different backgrounds: statisticians, optimization people, forecasting people, data mining folks, etc. Each one of them had different training background. So each one of them had their view of the world. When you bring them all together, one thing you have to convince them is that what you're proposing is not going to challenge what they're doing, or it's not going to make things worse for them. You're trying to, all of you together, get to a better place. But how do you explain that you are hoping to get to a better place? Is you need to actually be able to explain things from their perspective. So you know by listening to them what their fears are. Then you work with them and say, okay, here is what you're thinking. Here is where we can overcome this in this fashion. So some technique that I think will always help is when you bring different groups together, each of them have different goals, but you keep moving to a higher goal, which is more generic. And at the end of the day, when you're working for a software company, the goal that everyone will agree is that you want SAS Institute software to excel in all ways. So once, and that is a common goal for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a part of the statistics product or OR product or whatever. You want SAS to do better. So then you say, okay, now that we have this common goal, how does what we are doing today help us achieve that? How can we do something better to achieve it faster, better, in a more timely fashion? It's a matter of convincing others that are a part of your team, convincing the stakeholders and saying that here is what I propose. You may be sent back and saying, hey, Radhika, you're out of your mind. This is not what we want to do. So you go back to the drawing board, try to come up with more convincing reasons and be able to explain it better. This is something that you have to do within your own company. This is something that you have to do when you're talking to your customer. So these are all some of the techniques that you need to learn to make sure that you address others' concerns. Always make sure that you put your team first. To me, my team was always like my family. And when you have a family that you care about, you want them to succeed. So they need to see you as their advocate. They need to see that you are not interested in doing something just because Radhika can benefit from it, but the team can benefit from it. So treating members as part of your family and helping them see that you care about their success is where you can make a big difference.
Yeah, I think those are really valuable insights and I think applicable across so many different situations. You've been a very active member of Informs, which is a professional association for decision and data sciences. And you've done this throughout your career. Most professionals don't necessarily associate themselves with these organizations in the industry. So I wanted to talk to you about how can professionals actually benefit from this kind of an association?
Yes, I think that's a very important question. If you are in academia, being part of a professional organization is something that is just expected from you. You are expected to write papers, you are expected to attend conferences, present at conferences, etc. But if you're in industry, that's not always top of mind for your managers. Neither is it something that appears to be beneficial to you. But from the beginning, I have been a huge fan of membership in professional organizations like Informs, which is the Institute for Operations Research and Management Science. It is the largest professional organization for OR and management science professionals. So, like you said, I've been a member of Informs since my student years and have enjoyed being a part of the community very much. So some of the many benefits I have enjoyed are publications, of course, attendance at annual conferences and meetings, and mentoring opportunities that it provides, both to be mentored and as well to mentor others. So, as I've grown in my seniority, of course, I've been doing a lot of paying it forward by talking to students or young professionals if they come to me for input or advice. But in my earlier years, it was always helpful to attend conferences and meet other people in industry and even in academia to see where they have excelled, what are the challenges they face, what did they do to overcome them. So you learn from that. So it's not you have to have an official mentor. You can use every opportunity that you have to discuss with others as a mentoring opportunity. You can learn something from that. I was very fortunate that SAS Institute supported its R&D members if they wish to join professional organizations and encouraged us to attend conferences to both share our experiences as well as learn about the newest trends in the field. So I never had to argue that, hey, I would like to apply for membership to this organization. Will you support me? At one time, I think SAS Institute probably had one of the largest groups of members attending an Informs conference, of which I was very, very proud from industry, I mean.
I see.
So
Wow.
I would say that to young professionals, find an organization that is most suited to your background and join it early in your career. It will pay a lot.
Yeah, and I think taking that forward, you served as the 2022 president of Informs, and you did something really interesting during your term. You chaired an AI ad hoc committee, which is responsible for the AI strategy at Informs. Could you tell us a little bit about that committee, its goals?
Sure. I'd be glad to. This has been my passion for the past 5 years. First and foremost, I must say that serving as the president of Informs was something I had never dreamed of. If somebody had asked me even 10 years ago, would you be Informs president? I would have said, what? No. I was extremely surprised when I was asked to run for the post of president and won the election. But I would say that the AI initiative of Informs actually predates my term on the board, and it may have actually played a part in my invitation to run for the post of president. So it's intertwined. So early 2019, I had just retired from SAS at the end of December 2018. And the president of Informs at that time, he invited me to co-chair an AI ad hoc committee. So this was in 2019. So the goal of this committee was to highlight the value that OR brings to AI and to promote collaboration between the AI and the OR communities. Something that many of us in Informs had felt was OR has so much to offer for AI, but it's not recognized in the broader AI community or in the broader world as such. People usually turn to computer science departments when they think about AI, and OR has a lot to offer as well. We felt that each group had much to offer to the other. When Krishnan asked me to join to be a co chair for that, I accepted, and I've been involved in the AI initiative all those years. And it was one of my key efforts when I was on the board as well. So we continued the AI initiative. And even after my term finished, briefly, the goals for the AI initiative for Informs has been to advance and promote OR and analytics within the AI community. We want to make sure Informs members are recognized for what they can do and provide and add value in the AI space. We want to explore efforts in education, publications, workshops at the intersection of OR and AI, and collaborate with other communities in AI, like Association for Computing Machinery, Triple AI, and so on, and advocate for OR and analytics among the policymakers. How can we increase funding opportunities in NSF and other sources related to AI initiatives that can come from OR research? And position Informs as a resource on all these AI initiatives that have now become so popular. Those were all some of the ideas we had when we started the initiative, and it has continued to feed the work that has been going on as part of these ad hoc committees. And I'm glad to say that even in 2025, the plan is to continue a committee for AI initiatives. I'm not going to be chairing it, but I have offered my help in any way possible.
Yeah, this is really inspiring, Radhika, just to hear the energy that you have, even post retirement, to be actively involved and driving some of these initiatives forward.
Thanks, Ashwini. Yeah, it has kept me very active and excited through my retirement years so far.
Yeah, and I guess interdisciplinary research is super important, and it comes down to who's going to own this because it's a fuzzy area, right? Essentially.
Exactly. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the key points you have to remember is that when you're trying to bring two different disciplines together, no discipline should view the other as a threat. So you need to convince everybody that what you're trying to do is not to put down one group or the other, but to together be better than separately, whatever we could do.
And any parting thoughts for anyone who's trying to either break into OR or AI or any of these areas?
Sometimes I wish I could start my life all over again because I feel like so much has happened. There are so much opportunity in so many different industries to make a mark in the fields of or AI analytics. I feel like you are at a wonderful point of time when analytics and AI are ubiquitous. and everyone understands its tremendous value to industry and how it can solve some of the world's most complex problems. People will not always think about OR when you talk about all this, but my passion has been to make sure that OR is recognized as well in this field. And I think we're making a big inroads into this. So I feel like with a background in OR, you can bring your expertise to bear in all the fields that we've talked about and make sure that you continue to work with the different areas and figure out how you can help them, how they can help you, because quite often there are problems in AI that are very important to improving your own OR techniques. How can you improve the optimization algorithms using some of the deep learning methods or some of the methods that you see from insights that you gain from data, etc. So just, I would say, keep your mind open. There's always a learning opportunity. Make sure that you accept the fact that learning is a lifelong activity that you should not shy away from, and look for new opportunities. Enjoy the abilities you have today to use massive amounts of computing research and the ubiquitous nature of the data that are available to be able to make smarter decisions for a better world. I'm using the tagline for Informs, which is the smarter decisions for a better world.
Absolutely. And we'd be happy to link a bunch of references in the show notes as well. To
Yes.
all of this. Thank you so much, Radhika. This was a really eye-opening conversation. And it is amazing to see that though you're an expert in this area, you were able to explain it to us in a way that all of us get it. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're welcome, Ashwini. I am very thankful to you for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And I hope it's valuable to the listeners. And of course, you're welcome to share my contact information if anybody would like to get in touch with me. Like I said, something that I've been trying to do is pay it forward. So if there is someone who wants to reach out to me for some input, I'd be glad to do that as well. And thanks to you for the tremendous work that you are doing and your team in this podcast series. I think it's fantastic.
Thank
Congratulations
you,
on this effort.
thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube or on any podcast platform. Follow us on LinkedIn at Through the Corporate Glass. You can leave us a comment on YouTube or send us feedback via our website, throughthecorporateglass.com. We would love to hear your feedback.